Good afternoon, and welcome to the end of week market review for Friday, December 28th, 2012. Before we get started with today's presentation, we are going to ask that you pause this video while you give the disclaimer a quick read. Once you're done, you can go ahead and press play. The few things that we're going to be covering today will include market news, which will include actual news that's going on the streets, as well as some economic reports. We'll then take a look at both the daily and weekly charts for the S&P 500, as well as the TSX. We'll then finish by taking a look at the volatility indicator. So as we can see, the Dow Jones has closed 1.92% from last week's close, with the S&P 500 down 1.94%. Now this is all with concern over what's going on with the fiscal cliff. We could also see that oil is up 2.45% from last week. It is now at $90.99 per barrel. Silver is unchanged from last week, keeping at $30.04 per ounce. Gold went up marginally. It is up 0.10% from last week, now putting it to $1,657.10 per ounce. The US-Canadian pair is up 0.34%, putting it to 0.9964 pips. If we look at the economic reports, we can see that the most significant thing that happened throughout the week was the jobless reports, which is now at 350,000, as opposed to the expected 365,000. Because the jobless reports came in less, we did end up seeing some positive news. Unfortunately, this was greatly overshadowed because of the fiscal cliff. While looking at the S&P 500 on its daily chart, we can see that we have taken quite a bit of a pullback. We are now looking for some support around 1400. Unfortunately, the MACD is now declining bearish. Now this is with the black line down below the blue line. Looking at the S&P 500 on a weekly chart, we are still encouraged to see that it is still in an uptrend. Now, although we are definitely experiencing some pullbacks now, and we can see that our cycle lows are trending down, we haven't had the opportunity to see any of our cycle lows lower than previous lows, which means there is still that possibility that we could work ourselves back up, and possibly up into the 1500s. Though we are coming up to the support at 1400, which means this is going to be the testing time to see if we break down below this trend line. If we break down below it, there's a very good possibility that we'll also dip down below the previous cycle low. While looking at the TSX, we can see that it's also looking for some support, with its support being at 12,250. Now this is with a MACD which is declining bullish, and with the black line down below the blue line. If we look at the TSX on a weekly chart, we can see that it's also being pinched between support and resistance. It is still in between the two, and although the cycle highs are getting lower, the cycle lows are getting higher, which means that it's really starting to get pinched, and we can't say for certain which way it's going to end up going. Though we could see that the TSX isn't really being affected by the fiscal cliff. Alright, now for some startling technical analysis, we can see that the volatility indicator is at 22.72. This means that it's up 27.35% from last week's close. Given that the volatility indicator is above 16, we certainly need to start exercising some caution. Now that it's into the 22s, we really should be sitting on the sidelines and waiting to see what ends up happening. We know that if the indicator crosses up above 30, that we really should slow down and almost stop all of our trading, because the volatility would be considered too high. So with that said, if anybody has any further questions, feel free to email us at training@idealtradinglifestyle.com. You could also reach us toll free at 1-888-942-0266. That's extension number 5. So with that said, this has been the end of week market review for Friday, December 28th, 2012. Ciao for now.